a weekend buddy, shop dog. I wanted to get a little bit of information cleared up because I'm fielding more and more emails, guys asking these questions. Wanted to talk about cant or tilt of your plate, MOA offset. So it's obviously much more common when it comes to rifles. I don't consider it something that needs to be even looked at with pistols. If we look at typical optic on a pistol, your typical red dot optic has roughly 60 MOA of vertical elevation from center line of your optic. So 60 up, 60 down, typically. Some of them have more, some of them have less. So if we consider the typical optic on a pistol has a 1-inch offset from your bore center line, that 1-inch offset is going to equal roughly 4.5 MOA, 4.7 MOA for 1 inch at 20 yards, which let's just call it 5 clicks, 5 MOA. If you got 60 MOA of adjustment down, 60 MOA up, you got 5 clicks. Now, I will say this can vary from pistol to pistol. Not every pistol is exactly the same, even if it's the exact same pistol. Every pistol has a slight deviation from the exact same tilt or elevation angle in their slides. Who fits it, how they fit it. Even if it is mass produced, it doesn't matter. There's always a slight deviation. Some of these pistol companies, we all consider them great because they have loose tolerances. How are we going to scrutinize somebody that is precise about machining when it comes to a company or several companies that are infamous for having loose tolerances? So let's just take that MOA offset and do some simple math. 1 MOA at 20 yards is roughly 0.2094, almost on the dot. So 1 MOA is less than 1/4 inch at 20 yards. So that 1 MOA offset, we got 5 clicks, 5 MOA of adjustment. We've still got 55 left. When it comes to my plates, the majority of them are right around that 5 mark. Some of them have been a little less, 3, 4 clicks to get dead zero. Some of them have been 7, 8, 9. It depends on the pistol, the optic. There's a lot of variables in here. So one of the biggest variables is going to be your optic. If you consider an optic a precision instrument, it is. It has to be. You've got a tiny, tiny red dot emitter inside there that's sending let's call it a laser, a red fiber, whatever you want to consider it, up to a glass that has a very specific contour to it. Your red dot needs to be precisely indexed inside that emitter. I've had guys emailing me saying that they ran out of vertical elevation to zero their optic. There's a few companies that I make custom plates for, and they're high dollar 1911, 2011 builders. The guys custom make you iron sights. I make them plates. They requested a very specific angle. It's less than 1 degree. Less than 1 degree at 20 yards gives you roughly that 5 clicks. So those optics on those plates, because they're custom built, again, this pistol is dialed in every which way you can. Even the optics are dead centered in their adjustment travels. For the mass-produced guns, I don't believe it's necessary. You got 5 clicks out of 60 to get zeroed. And let's just say I do adjust these plates and I start canting them and putting a 0.626 degree tilt on them all. Well, now you complicate things because now your screw holes need to be indicated or indexed off of the slide cut, but the surface that you're machining is going to be at a different angle. So now we're getting into multiple setups, or if you got a 5-axis machine, you can hit it once and be done with it. But in general, it complicates things beyond what's necessary. I feel that out of 60 clicks, most people can sacrifice 5. For those of you guys that are running out of vertical elevation or vertical adjustment, I always start assessing things. I don't typically point the finger at anybody in particular. I like to evaluate my product first. And the majority of the time, I'll get a plate back from a customer and I will go through it meticulously, make sure everything's dialed in. The majority of the places that I see these vertical elevations running out of adjustment is on 2 optic manufacturers and 2 specific optics. I'm not going to get into it because I believe these companies are doing a great job. I think most of the companies that are getting into the red dot market are doing a great job. They're really pushing the limits and they're really trying to make the best possible product. And they are pushing this industry forward. They're improving things. I've reached out to a couple of them. I've got points of contact in a couple of the optic manufacturers, but some of these companies won't ever answer any email I ever send them. Knowing that these companies are addressing issues when they arise, they don't always have control of every aspect of this manufacturing process. And if you got a tiny emitter inside of an optic and it has to have your glass tilted at a precise angle, the emitter has to be indicated at a certain position, you've got 15 variables inside that optic that could cause an issue. If they're 2 or 3 thousandths out of tolerance, then you're running out of any elevation travel you have. Those have to be far more precise than most plates, slides, any other cut. And if this was an issue, it would pop up a lot more. It doesn't. 95+% of my customers don't have an issue. The majority of guys doing slide cuts that are optic specific make it parallel with the slide. They don't indicate it at 1 degree and cut. Some might. Okay. If they think it's necessary, cool. But it's not something that I think's an issue. Like I said, I sell thousands of plates a year, even being a one-man shop, and it's not an issue. It's a few guys making a big deal out of it because they're running out of elevation. Well, if we start looking at other aspects where it could potentially be an issue, when I start doing testing and when I've reached out to some of these companies that make these optics, they address it. They say, yes, this is a possibility. It's not always popping up, but from time to time it does. One thing in this industry, I will say, a lot of guys have expectations of pistols, and a lot of the pistols are great. I think the firearms industry is doing great. They're making some good products. But when we start looking at a lot of other areas of it, there's a reason that they say it passed quality control. They'll never tell you a spec. They'll never tell you a dimension. They'll never tell you what their tolerances are. I've even seen guys send in slides for a quality control check that the guy checked himself, and the company reached back to him and said it passed quality control. And when you stick screws in the slide, factory optic cut, the screws are literally tilted out. Just tops of the screws are pushed out further than the bottoms would be. So clearly something was off in that. That was a factory cut slide. I've got no issues fixing stuff. If guys reach out to me and they say they got an issue, I always ask for as much information as I can. I try to dial in my process as much as possible. My goal is to always make the best possible product and get to guys. And if a company's off on their cut, you got to think, I don't blame these companies. Some of them make thousands of guns a week, a month, every quarter. They make thousands of guns. They got dozens and dozens of employees. They've got maybe a couple dozen CNC machines, which have hundreds and hundreds of tools inside of them. They're not always checking all the variables. Just for an example behind here, every time I replace a tool or check a tool, or even after X amount of hours of running it, I might check it. If I buy 15 tools, end mill cutters, end mills, out of those 15, there's going to be 14 variables. Just because it's a 1/4 inch end mill doesn't mean it's a 1/4 inch end mill. It might be 2 thou under. Well, if I'm making cuts on two sides and it's 2 thou undersized, you're leaving material on both ends of that cut. A lot of these employees at these companies, they're collecting a check. They're making X amount of slides a day or X amount of parts a day. That's what their job is. It's to make parts. If you guys buy a plate from me and you have a fit issue, I knew this getting into this game. I wanted to make the best possible fitting product I could. I machined my plates to a specific dimension. If your slide is off a couple thou or 2 thou, you might not have a perfectly fitting plate. But if you're patient with me, you hit me up, send me an email, ask me about it. I'll put your plate back in the machine. All my fixtures, all my work holding is indicated. I can drop it into the machine with your part on there, and I can trim off a little bit if it's undersized. If my plate's undersized for your slide and it's a little loose in there. I've had plenty of customers tell me that, hey, it's loose in the slide, and I'll make you a new one. But just wanted to get a little information out there and bring it up. Some of these things I don't think are an issue. Some of them can be addressed easily, but appreciate it.